Doesn't matter.
So, are you shooting right now?
Yeah.
Thanks, you just ruined the whole thing.
All right, let's start over.
One of the things I was, thinking through is just how many times we get questioned from customers on different things. And one of those questions that always seems to come up is the question of bid spec. And I was curious, how you guys answer that kind of a question. Something that I regularly am challenged with trying to understand, or trying to really put to words why to customers. Because obviously it seems like we're the guys providing the service. And so it's really easy for us to be like, well, yeah, we don't want to do bids. Why do we not want to do bids? So what's your thoughts? How do you guys kind of position that, word that?
Well, it's funny. I mean, here we are where we have our Christmas party, and it was maybe a year ago that we were actually in a situation where someone asked us to be on a bid. Mm-hmm. And I'm here talking on the phone, hating myself for even entertaining it. But I told the customer, I said, we don't do bids. Why? Because it's an exercise in futility. It's basically who can make the fewest dollars.
Yeah.
And then there's really no concept of relationship. And I a lot of times use the kind of picture of, there's fist over palm, which is kind of like, I want you to all bid it. I'm going to go with the lowest person. I might even beat them up a little bit more. And then there's the idea of relationship, kind of that concept of technology partner that we talk about, kind of interlaced fingers. And I say that's what we're about. And I told this person around Christmas, I said, we're going to be higher. We're going to be maybe 10, 15% higher because we can't be at, near zero. And I said, as long as you're prepared for that we're not going to come and try to, be the lowest, then we can work together. So funny enough, we ended up going up against the largest AV integrator in the country, and they chose us.
Nice.
And the reason that they chose us when talking to the consultant was, we really believe Profound has our best interest in mind. And I really think that it was a matter of kind of painting the picture and telling them that it's more than just the bottom line. So the reason we don't do it is because it just doesn't make sense, because it doesn't value the relationship, and that's really what we're about.
Yeah, it's a huge part. I mean, I think it's even more than just the relationship. It's one facet of it, right? But at the end of the day, the customer is the one who gets shortchanged. Because if you came to me and you said, hey, here's a $100,000 bid, all you got to do is beat it. I can beat that all day long. It's no problem. I'll come in at 98,000. But how do people beat it? They typically beat it because they cut things out. They usually are taking a critical aspect of the job out to make sure that they're the cheapest guy. Something that the customer may not even understand is necessary and needed. And one of the things I value heavily about what we do is that we're looking for the long term. Like you mentioned, the relationship aspect, looking for the idea of how do we make sure that this job is not just successful the day we put it in, but it's successful years after we put it in. And part of that is, as we all know, like I always use the term of saying, it's not if it's going to fail, it's when it's going to fail, right? Technology does fail. It's stupid for us to pretend that it doesn't. Nobody, and so if we acknowledge the fact that the technology is going to fail, then I think what's important for us from an engineering perspective, and it's really the hard part, is engineering a solution that has the ability to be kept as reliable as possible, but also has the ability to be able to be fixed easily when it does go down. Mm-hmm. And those are the little pieces. Those are the pieces that probably increase the project price by 10 or 15%, but it saves you significantly on the back end when you factor in service visits that don't need to be done because we can do it all remotely. Or the fact that the system doesn't go down because we put a commercial display in instead of that residential display that somebody bought at Costco. So those factors are always not going to be considered when we're talking about bid specs. The guy who's making the decision at the top doesn't look at it and say, why is this company more qualified? He is literally looking at the number.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is that a lot of times this bid spec, specification comes down like it's coming down from a mountaintop, and everyone has to, try to design, not even design to it, just quote to it, and they're flawed.
Very flawed. The consultant side is very frustrating at times.
And then, you try to tell, in this bid environment, you try to tell the customer this, which they're interested to hear, but then the consultant's like, just bid it as it is. Figure it out later.
I can't say how many times I've heard that.
So then that's like, okay, if we were to do that, we have no way of making sure that it's right. So then you select us and we're doomed to begin with. So that's another reason why.
Yeah, when we do, the times that I think we've been involved in bids have been because we have a customer that we have a relationship with, that we've been working with for a while, but are required to send something to bid. And it's frustrating in those situations because we'll get this bid spec that's been designed by a consultant, and our team looks at it and they says, this can't work. This is impossible. It will not function.
Right.
And so we go back to the customer and we tell them that, and unfortunately we've got to stick to this bid spec so that we can be one of the many that are throwing a number towards it.
I think that's an important one.
Yeah, bids tend to create a cash flow oriented business model where businesses that participate in bids, because they have to bid it down, bid the price down to win the project, they don't have much cash. And so at the end of the day, when they're not making enough in margin, then their cash flows are tight. And if their cash flows are tight, they have to chase the next bid.
Yeah.
And if they're chasing the next bid, and that's happening over and over and over again, it just means that their wallet is tighter for hiring talent. So when you have tighter talent pools, tighter budget for talent pools, you end up in a position where you're sending people off the site that have low knowledge of what they're doing, and you're trying to get them to, complete the project, but they're constantly calling back to the office looking for support, and you're constantly having to overstaff in order to compensate for that kind of thing, and it becomes a bad circuit.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too worth mentioning with bids is sometimes, and you touched on this, sometimes the customer just has a procedural thing where they just need 3 prices, and they can in fact choose the one that is the highest value.
Yeah.
And so we're here for that. We don't mind, there's no shame in what we do. It's not like we're trying to conceal our secret recipe. We can provide a proposal, but we just won't want to avoid this idea of let us try to be the lowest cost, or let us try to take someone else's design and be the lowest cost. It just doesn't make sense to us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we forget about the idea of how it impacts us as a company as well, which is important. Number one is that we're in business for the purpose of being able to service our customers to the long term. And it just takes away from this idea of partnership, right? Something that we have really focused on is making sure that we're a good partner. We can't be a good partner if we can't be around. We can't be a good partner if we can't keep talented staff employed. And that's a really important factor. There's a lot of people that can do audio video. I always joke and say that many people that work for our competition got into the industry simply because they used to be a car audio guy, and they were like, I know how to hook up speakers, I can do that at a commercial job, And the problem with that scenario is that they don't have the technical knowledge. It takes effort to hire people who are really technically knowledgeable and understand what they're doing, and to keep them, and it's really tough to do. So we're in business of making sure that we can employ great employees to support their families so that we can be there for our customers, and create simple solutions for our customers.
Yeah, I mean, the other issue is that companies that participate in bids on a regular basis and aren't making enough profit on them have to chase more and more bid opportunities to make up for that, which means that they have to staff for that large volume of bid projects.
At low margin.
At low margin, yes. So they're consuming a large amount of people from the talent pool, if you want to call it that, and then they're sending them on site, and they're trying to manage numerous projects all at the same time. And we hear from our customers a lot that, either people don't show up on time, or the people that showed up to the beginning of the job don't actually know what they're doing, and they're there to babysit the project until the actual talent shows up.
Yep.
And then that just opens up, once the project's completed, your day 2 problems.
Yeah.
Is how do you support a project that doesn't have any money in it on day 2?
Yeah.
When something goes wrong and the customer needs support, if the original company didn't make any money, their motivation for coming back out to fix things it's gone.
I hear that all the time. And it's frustrating for us. It's a ripoff for us, because when we get called in to try to fix their problem, there's no money left for us at that point. And then we're trying to come in and save the day, and we don't even have enough margin to be able to fix it. So that's really challenging for sure.
I will say though, it's gotten us some good customers, because we've also had where we get brought in and then we save the day. I'm thinking of one of our customers in New York City, and they use probably the second largest systems integrator in the country, and that went through the bid process and made a mess of it, and then we ended up coming in and fixing scores of rooms that weren't wired properly, that weren't finished because the original guy's gone, and the customer just got tired of calling the third project manager
Yeah.
saying, please come finish it. And so it has helped us to
Absolutely.
educate our customers and to get them not to want to do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell a first-hand story as well. We have a customer who you can guess, but gentleman Kevin and I were just talking about this morning is number 2 on the Forbes list. And we do some work with their businesses. And this gentleman, they were going through a bid spec opportunity, and they used the largest company in the country that does AV. We all know who that is. And they just got terrible service because it's the same thing. They were required in the initial part of their phases to go out to bid. And they went to bid. They got this company to come in and install probably 40 or 50 rooms in their building, and they never get the company out to service the system, right? They won't respond. And so the company loses the bid, loses the job at the end after they've already kind of installed everything. We came in, saved the day, and we've been out there for a number of years now as their partner, taking over everything piece by piece.
And it's because of that cash flow business model.
Yep.
That they're not worried about the customer, they're worried about the cash to pay the bills this week.
Yep.
And the customer is the second thought there.
So is it cheaper for someone to go with a bid ultimately, or is it cheaper for them to spend a few more dollars?
I mean, up front, it's going to be cheaper to go with the bid, and then you're going to spend the more dollars on the back end.
Yep.
You're going to spend the dollars fixing it. You're going to spend the dollars realizing that the design wasn't right, or you're going to spend the dollars because the competency isn't there.
Yep.
And same thing with day 2.
Or you may not ever have a system that works well because it was designed budget, it's designed with the budget in mind. And so it just never functions appropriately. So then you're putting up with it for 4 or 5 years before you finally say, I'm tired of it, I want to replace it. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think the cost of something is what it costs you up front, and then what it costs you throughout the lifetime. And so when you measure that cost, people would have been better off just doing it kind of right the first time.
Absolutely.
And the other aspect is deadlines. When you're in a bid scenario, you're just another person that looked for the best price. So the motivation for a company to meet your deadline is kind of lowered at that point.
Yeah.
They're not getting the amount of money that they need to make from this project, and so their motivation to keep you as happy as can be is lower.
Yep.
And so when your deadline comes up and that's in conflict with another customer's deadline, they're not going to take your deadline seriously.
Yep.
The audio video company, you're just another one of the people. And that's not something that we do. Deadlines are incredibly important to us. That's one of the forefronts of our approach.
Yeah.
Is that if you say you're trying to get it done at a certain time, then we're going to get it at that time.
We deliver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost like in spite of the customer at times.
So yeah, definitely.
Yep.
The customer comes across delays, and we're constantly knocking on doors saying, hey, let's solve these delays because we want to hit your deadline.
Yep.
So, yeah.
A lot of our jobs are not just commercial jobs. Some of them are ultra high-end residential projects. And the interesting factor with that is that whether residential or commercial, the build out of a project takes time. It's not just simply the implementation that's that window of 6 weeks or 8 weeks of putting everything in. It's the lead up, it's the construction phase, it's being there for the drawings, it's having the project management meetings, it's all that. And those types of things tack away at the margins on the project. And that's again where you kind of absorb the idea that a company who hasn't, who's bidded it skinny, doesn't have the time to actually give you the attention to be there for that project management phase, for that engineering check, to make sure everything is done correct, to show up at the meetings, and that really suffers on the project for sure.